I'ma turn it up and then I'm gonna take it down. I'ma turn it up and then I'm gonna take it down. I'ma turn it up and then I'm gonna take it down. I'ma turn it up and then I'm gonna take it down. I'ma turn it up and then I'm gonna take it down. I'ma turn it up and then I'm gonna take it down. I'ma turn it up and then I'm gonna take it down. I'ma turn it up and then I'm gonna take it down. I'ma turn it up and then I'm gonna take it down. I'ma turn it up and then I'm gonna take it down. I'ma turn it up and then I'm gonna take it down. I'ma turn it up and then I'm gonna take it down. I'ma turn it up and then I'm gonna take it down.
So this company, NewAge, sent me an email, and I think I'd heard of them. Like, I think their stuff used to be sold at Costco, or maybe it still is. And they wanted me to review some of their cabinets. And my thought was, you know what? Send them to me. I'll throw them in my office, use them for camera gear storage for a while, and then after a review, I'll build something that's specific to my needs and go from there. And the guy at NewAge was like, that's fine, you can do that, but I think once you see our Pro Series, you're not going to want to get rid of them. And honestly, the guy was right. And it's because they're made so damn well. I think most cabinets like this are 24 gauge steel or higher. These are 18 gauge. As a reference, most Snap-on toolboxes are 16 gauge with 18 gauge internals. These are just built like a brick shithouse, man. Like, they have European style hinges, soft close, and then the details, like, you know, this shelf is on sliders. Everything's just made really, really well, surprisingly well. I was kind of shocked. So yeah, the guy was right. I wouldn't feel right about throwing these in and then just getting rid of them. I don't know that I could, well, I know I couldn't build anything as high quality as this. So I want to keep them and I want to use them. But a couple of things kind of stand in my way. The first thing is, in order to build these in proper and make them look right, I have a bit of an obstacle. You can see this is a metal building, my lab is, and I have this steel post that sticks out about 3.5 inches from the wall and prohibits me from getting the cabinets flush against this wall. On top of that, most of my lab, as you guys have seen me build, is birch plywood. Here's my kitchen, which, excuse the mess, all the camera gear that used to be where these cabinets are is stored over there right now. And then, of course, my desk setup that I built a few years ago is all Baltic birch and white and super clean. And that's kind of the aesthetic of my office. So what to do about that? I've got some ideas. Let's get started.
The first thing I needed to do was tie these cabinets to the wall. To do that, I grabbed a scrap 2x4 I've had laying around and drilled it to accept some lag bolts. I then took that 2x4 to the wall and lagged it to the studs. From there, I used the adjustable feet on the cabinets to get them straight in line with each other and plumb to the wall behind. And with that done, I could then use the hardware supplied by NewAge to bolt the cabinets securely to each other using the pre-drilled factory holes. This made getting the cabinet faces flush to each other really easy. And now all that was left to do was shim the cabinets to the previously installed 2x4 and then lag bolt them in.
All right, cabinets are installed, dead level, and rock solid. That went pretty well. It took me about an hour to get them, tied to the wall and tied to each other. And that brings us to our problem with this gap it leaves behind because of the steel beam. And you'll notice also I didn't tie this base cabinet to the wall at all. It's just tied to the cabinet it sits aside. And the reason I did that is because I have these outlets right here and I will need to be able to access those. So this base cabinet came with a really nice butcher block top. I am not going to use it, and that's one of the ways I'm going to tie this whole thing into the aesthetic of my lab. So yeah, I guess let's move on to the next stage of the project and make this thing look as good as it functions.
It seemed like the sensible next step was to create the bench top. I did so by processing a sheet of 3/4 inch Baltic birch and producing 2 panels roughly the size of the top. I then laminated them together using a liberal amount of glue, screws, weight, and clamps. The next morning, the glue had cured and I used my track saw to get a straight and flat edge that I could run against the table saw fence in order to create 2 parallel sides. Then it was just a matter of measuring the base cabinet and cutting the top to the appropriate final size. Next, I sanded the whole piece down to 220, put a rough couple of coats of polyacrylic on the bottom side, and my first couple of coats on the exposed plywood sides. I was just sort of preparing the piece for the laminate top. I threw down a couple of coats of contact cement on both the top and the laminate before starting the lamination. This went pretty smoothly, and I moved on to routing the edges and trimming the laminate. That out of the way, I could finally put a final finish on the exposed plywood edges. I did around 7 coats in all, with lots of sanding and perfecting in between. The result is super clean and a super polished looking top ready to go on the cabinet.
Okay, my top is done and just laid on there for now. And it came out, well, I mean, it came out perfect, which there's not a flaw in it. And that's a rarity for me. But now that that's done, I've got to figure out what to do about the before mentioned gap between the cabinet and the wall. Now, my original plan was to basically encase the entire cabinet in plywood. Just, polyed over birch plywood to match my kitchen and the rest of the lab. But now that I see this top on the black cabinet, there's such a stark contrast between the plywood and the laminate and the black cabinet. So I think I need to do something to play with that a little bit more than just plywood. And also, man, cladding these cabinets would be expensive. Close to 3 sheets of plywood and $100 a sheet. I don't really want to spend $300 doing this. But I got an idea, and I think it's gonna be not only cheaper, but I think it's gonna look better as well. So I'm gonna give it a shot.
I started with a 10-inch wide scrap of birch ply that I taped off and prepped for laminate. I then applied contact cement and laid down some laminate to the tape line, being as precise as I possibly could. Then, after trimming the laminate as I typically do, things started to get a bit weird. I laid down a 1/4-inch stripe of automotive pinstripe tape, butting up against the laminate reveal that I'd created earlier. I then taped off the freshly installed laminate and applied 10 coats of polyacrylic over both the pinstripe tape and the exposed birch. Much to my surprise, the vinyl pinstripe tape showed no negative reaction to the poly, and my test piece turned out really nice. In fact, I laid down so much poly and did so much sanding that the pinstripe is completely buried and the piece is smooth to the touch. With that successful test completed, I could move on to creating the 3 panels I needed to address the gap I've been so worried about. I used the same process for these as I did on the test panel, and it went pretty smoothly, but man, this was time consuming. I've done so much laminate work that if it were the 1980s, I'd be the toast of every cut-rate apartment complex contractor in Texas. I mean, I can slap a laminate countertop together in no time without even breaking a sweat. But throw in the added lunacy of a vinyl stripe and 10 coats of poly, that's when things get more time consuming than like a bureaucratic nightmare at the DMV. Good God, man, it took forever. When I finally finished, I was so mind numb that I forgot to film myself scribing these panels to the wall. But I did that, and then had my daughter come out and help me mount the panels to the cabinets. She held them on one side while I screwed them in from the other. Afterwards, I figured I needed 2 more things to wrap up the project, the first of which was a way to display a deck lid from an old race car that I wrecked last year. I wanted it over the bench and figured I would build a small shelf that it could hang from. So I took some scraps and dominoed them together. Afterwards, I added some triangulated support and then gave the whole thing a few coats of, what else, poly. I then mounted it to the wall and hung my deck lid with a couple of pieces of red paracord. It looked really good, actually. and then I could cap the whole thing off with the backsplash. It's just another piece of birch scrap. This time I treated it and tortured myself by laying out a few 1/8 inch pinstripes. And again, more sanding, more poly, more sanding, more poly. I wasn't sure how to mount it, so I just put a liberal amount of construction adhesive on the back and clamped it up overnight. It seems to work fine.
Excuse the mess. I literally just pulled the tape from my caulk job and haven't cleaned up, but it's done. Like, finished, finally. Took forever. But I guess it starts with the cabinets. And I sound like a shill for NewAge, but I'm not. They're not paying me at all. I just really like these things. They're super heavy. And, you know, they're expensive, yes, but it's not Lista expensive or Snap-on expensive. It's reasonable for what you get. Really nice hardware, really nice hinges. When I say hardware, I mean hinges, because the one gripe I have is the hardware they include to, you know, tie the cabinets together and tie them to the wall is not great. But that is literally the only flaw I have found in this whole setup. Here's one of the shelves that I didn't use, and you can see 2 crossbars for support, super heavy gauge steel, and the powder coat job is fantastic. I'm super impressed, and I'm glad I went to the effort of making this, you know, work in my shop aesthetically as well. And yeah, the laminate turned out pretty great. I like the way the sort of half reveal works and the red stripe. And even the backsplash. I wasn't super sure about the backsplash when I finished it. I thought maybe it was a little gaudy, but I think it works. Maybe I'll change my mind later, but yeah, I like it. There was a bit of a nightmare with this longer 8-foot laminate piece. During the process, I stuck the laminate to the piece wrong and tried to take it off and broke it. Lots of cussing ensued. Then had my wife come out to help me do it a second time. But it turned out good, looks great. Why don't I, while I'm here, I'll open some of these doors and kind of show you how I'm using this space to organize my crap. The workbench side. This is where I keep basically like my camera EDC stuff. On this top drawer, I have all of my commonly used supplies as well as my main camera bag. And I work out of my camera bag even when I'm at the shop. It just keeps everything in one spot. And when I do need to go on location or something, I can just grab and go. And it's nice to have this rollout shelf because it makes it completely accessible, but I can just tuck it away when I'm not using it, which is super cool. And then below, I just have my tripods and sliders and things like that. Keep in mind, a lot of this crap is behind me right now as I'm filming. In this first tall cabinet, I keep kind of my deep photography storage. And to be honest, I only have about half of my crap in here now. I'm still working on getting it all sorted. But because these shelves each one of these I think is 22 inches deep or 21 inches deep, there's just a ton of space. And it's going to take me a little while to figure out how to mostly, efficiently arrange everything. But it's coming together really, really well, and I'm going to have spare space, which is awesome. And this is the last cabinet. So I'm a bag nerd. I collect bags, pouches, and crap like that. And a lot of this is photography bags, but there's also other kinds of bags as well. And what's super cool is these cabinets come with a clothes rod hanger, which is really nice. I just 3D printed these bag hangers, and I'm not going to tell you this is all the bags I have because that would be a lie. There's a ton more that will go in here. And then that leaves plenty of room for, organizing, camera bag dividers, pouches, straps, other bags. It's going to be a dream. I'm so excited to actually get all this crap out and really organize it. It's going to be awesome. That's it. She's done and I'm done. And I know I haven't done a video in quite a while. I've been really busy with car stuff. But I have another project coming up here pretty quick, and hopefully I'll have another video out here within a month or so. So thanks for tuning in, and check back later.